welcome to everyone joining us online today for our ACBC Victoria, Victorian Government China Freight Update webinar. My name is Virginia Birrell and I'm the CEO of the Australia-China Business Council in Victoria. I'll begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Wurundjeri people from the Kulin Nation, and those from all localities around Australia where our audience may be. And I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. I'd like to warmly welcome back those of you online who've joined our previous sessions in our Global Victoria Trade Alliance China Export Program. We've developed quite a following and we thank you for your support. We're delighted to partner with Global Victoria to deliver this series of topical events over 12 months to help Victorian exporters expand their business opportunities with China. I'd like to give special thanks today to Austcham South China for supporting today's event and thank their CEO, Chuan Tran, for moderating today's session. It's been a delight working with you and your insights from the ground have been terrific in putting this program together. Freighting goods either by sea, air or land is now more difficult and expensive than ever before. As the impact of the 2-month lockdown in Shanghai is still biting, even though they've been lifted, exports from Australia are still experiencing delays and the availability of exports from China is down significantly. Though authorities are trying to jumpstart production, manufacturing continues to drag. And with the city's trucking capacity down an estimated 45%, it's difficult to get imported materials from the ports to the factories and consumers. These factories have led to an estimated 20 to 30% drop in export volumes out of Shanghai alone since the lockdown began, and a 2-day wait for arriving vessels. Many shippers are diverting to ports like Ningbo and southern China, where export volumes have increased by 14%, causing additional congestion. To give us an overview of the current state of play, I'm pleased to welcome Nick Henderson, the Victorian Government's Deputy Commissioner to Greater China, who will provide a state government update from the Victorian Trade and Investment Office in Chengdu. Sean Mooney, Executive General Manager at the Port of Melbourne, who will provide an update on this major port's activities. Darren Hu, the Cargo Manager for Australia and at China Southern Airlines, who will speak about the latest developments in China's air freight. Xiaoqi Hui from VIE China. They are specialists in customs clearance and logistics, and they will dissect recent developments in China's shipping. Alex Wong and Andrew Sutherland from Flores Global Sourcing will provide an update on freight and FMC supply chains. Jenny Lin, Vice General Manager, International Logistics at Zhuhang Group, will walk us through post-COVID logistics. Each speaker will give a short presentation and will join a panel discussion moderated by Chuan. Speaker bios can be found on the event page, which will be linked in the chat box. We strongly encourage those online today to ask any questions of our speakers at any point during today's session via the Q&A chat box, or via the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Now, to open proceedings and give us an on-the-ground report from China, I'm delighted to welcome Victoria's Deputy Commissioner, Nick Henderson, to the screen. Nick will need to depart after this presentation, so without further ado, over to you, Nick. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Virginia. Chuan Tran, board member of Austcham South China, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to provide a brief introduction to today's fantastic event. Global Victoria is really proud to be supporting this ACBC Victoria series of events that unpack the elements, insights and tools that are important to navigate and create ongoing success in China. This series features leading experts in their fields, sharing practical information to Victorian businesses navigating their China commercial journey. Today, on the 7th of June, is the 7th of our series of events, which commenced last year and focuses on 3 core elements as part of the series. The first of these is why China, and that was predominantly last year. What is the opportunity, how to define it, how to structure it, how to enter, how to grow, how to structure sales channels, etc. The second is growing in China, insights and tips as to the important considerations that you need to put into place to grow in China, given the market potential on the upside and the challenging and changing commercial and COVID environment on the downside. And then the third element is strategic China briefings, which is a range of one-on-one briefings that will be taking place this year with China experts to deep dive into several key topic areas. Today's event, as Virginia has mentioned, focuses on a well-rounded update on the current freight situation in southern China, from a sea freight, land, port, air freight, and also a cold chain logistics perspective, which I think is a really interesting and important element as well. Southern China is a main entry point for a large range of Australian cargo, from Victorian vitamin supplements to fresh fruit, and a lot of the fruit that comes from Victoria and indeed Australia passes through the different ports within southern China. South China sea and airports not only serve the Greater Bay Area, but they also play a valuable and critically important role in the nation's supply chains. Today's event is really relevant because of the dynamics at play impacting freight flows, not only between Australia and China, but also internally within China, given the COVID zero lockdowns. And it's not only in Shanghai. We've seen over the past 2 to 3 months lockdowns and impacts in many parts of China, from Tianjin to Changchun to Beijing to Shenzhen to Guangzhou, and so on. And this will continue so far as the zero COVID strategy is in place. And these are having real impact on exporting, impacting sales orders, impacting on operational costs and profitability for Victorian and indeed all exporters. The other element that will be covered today, as I mentioned, is the cold chain element. And I've been speaking and I've been doing a bit of travel over the last couple of weeks, and have been speaking to a number of retailers and also five-star hotel exec chefs and directors of operation, and some of the challenges they have had in actually importing, getting chilled product, getting meat, getting dairy into their businesses is a real challenge. And in one city, in Nanjing, not only is there a 2-week quarantine at the port in Shanghai for some imported products, there is local requirement that there is an additional 2-week quarantine in a central warehousing facility, cold chain warehousing facility in Nanjing, before it can be shipped to the end customer, a hotel or a restaurant chain. So these are impacting in a real way into servicing the market, meeting the needs of the customer, but obviously in terms of business as well. And Virginia made the reference to the spillover effects of the recent COVID lockdown in Shanghai. Just to put this all into perspective, Shanghai is the largest port in the world, and number 3 is Qingdao Port in Shandong. And 2 weeks ago, I met with the Shandong Port Group in Qingdao, and they certainly were experiencing a larger diversion level of vessels from Shanghai into Qingdao, albeit Qingdao itself is much more of a bulk port rather than a container port. But these flow-on effects are going to be impacting on clearance times. They're going to be impacting on a whole range of supply chain and end customer implications in terms of customers getting their product on time at a reasonable cost, because all of these delays also cost as well. So it's really important that this type of event takes place, sharing of information, working with qualified and experienced partners, whether they be freight forwarders, whether they be ports, whether they be with customs agents, etc. So important at this time to be working with the best possible people you can. And we have a really good panel of speakers today who will cover a lot of these topics and go into quite a bit of depth. And I encourage everybody, as we go through, to pop your questions in the Q&A box so that they can be answered as best possible towards the end of the event. Before I conclude, I just wanted to quickly talk about our footprint from the Victorian government standpoint in mainland China. We have around 25 staff. We've got 5 offices in Beijing, Shanghai, Nanjing, Hong Kong, and Chengdu. We sort of cover 3 main areas of responsibility. The first is international education promotion, investment attraction is the second element, and the third is trade development and facilitation. And that's an area we're working very closely with a large range of Victorian companies, and we've also set up a dedicated 920 square metre showroom in Shanghai to showcase Victorian food and beverage products, with the view of supporting those businesses to enter the market and grow within the Chinese market at a challenging time. And it's been a very successful platform for us in joining customer need to Victorian produce capabilities and offerings. So that's all from me. Looking forward to the rest of the event, and back to you, Virginia.
Thanks so much, Nick. Always a pleasure to hear from you. And as Nick mentioned, those events that we have already run, they are all available to our members in our Insights Centre on the website. You can listen to any of those sessions, and regardless of which state you are a member in, you can still access these Victorian recordings. So please avail yourselves of that opportunity if you've missed out on that. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce Sean Mooney, the Executive General Manager, Commercial, to provide an update on the Port of Melbourne. Thank you so much, Sean.
Thanks, Virginia, and thank you, Nick. I'll just share my screen if that's okay. I don't seem to be able to share my screen at the moment.
Okay, Katie will just give you that permission. She's just doing that now, so we'll be set. Great. Katie, you're right with that? Yep, good. There we go. That's good. Thanks, Sean.
It is still saying disabled. Sorry, Caitlin.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just adding that now.
Thank you. Maybe we can add all the others now, and then they'll be ready to go. Yep.
Yes.
Thank you. Apologies to everyone online. We had some technical issues earlier, so we only just got online on time. So that's normally we would have tested all this. So apologies for the delay.
I think I need to add it in my.
Okay. Thanks.
Sorry. It is all done now. Hopefully, Sean, you should be able to do that now.
Thanks.
Yep, all good. Thank you. Okay, can you see that okay?
Yes, that's perfect. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Virginia and Nick. So just as a brief overview, Port of Melbourne is Australia's largest container port. So obviously for exporters on the call, a really important gateway, not only for Victorian exporters, but also those from Tasmania, southern New South Wales, and also South Australia. I thought it'd be worth just stepping through in a little bit of detail what the pandemic has meant for freight, for the freight industry as a whole. So as consumers across the globe were stuck at home, their demand for goods increased quite dramatically, and we saw that through Port of Melbourne in a number of categories. So furniture was up year on year, 32%. Domestic appliances, so people stuck at home making more coffee, using their toasters more and those sort of things, grew 41% year on year. Clothing was up. Sporting goods and toys, as people couldn't go to the gym, they bought more goods for their home. So in essence, container trade was up just under 15% year on year. So we had just under 3.3 million containers pass through the port in FY21. What happened at the same time as that demand increased, the available vessel capacity, I guess, in the overall market was reduced. And I thought I'd show this example, might be useful for everyone to understand. So for the vessel in question, which is a regular Oceania service out of China to the east coast of Australia, the schedule typically takes 41 days, and certainly pre-COVID, that was the average it took. So with various impacts to that schedule during COVID, so in this particular case, we had lockdowns in Ningbo, which affected the efficient operation of the port there, and various other items that cause congestion throughout the overall circuit of that vessel. The overall trip or the rotation took 46 days. So you effectively are taking an extra 5 days. That vessel is out of action for an extra 5 days. So if you think about that happening globally, where effectively 11% of the capacity or 11% of the vessel fleet is no longer available. So you had an increase in demand, a reduction in available supply. And so as you can see there in the container price index, up until November 21, you saw increases from less than $2,000 for a 40-footer up sort of in excess of $10,000. In Australia, and Melbourne is consistent with other ports, we had congestion at the port as a result of COVID cases. That was at its highest point in January when Omicron was significantly impacting workforce. So you had labour not turning up for their shifts, so the terminals were physically unable to service as many vessels as they would normally. In Australia, in 2020 and 21, we had some industrial action at most of the ports that once again affected the efficient operation of the terminals. And as most exporters on the call would be aware, certainly the supply of containers has been a real challenge and continues to be so today. So with the delays on shipping schedules, quite often the shipping lines were aggressively trying to return containers back to Asia for use on their forward leg, which is the highest rate for them, which led to some containers being in short supply. Sorry, just to go back. Yeah, obviously we have seen the container index drop a bit since late 21. It's come off sort of 20% or so in the months to the end of May, but we certainly expect that once volumes start flowing out of Asia again, following the easing of some of the lockdowns in Shanghai, that rates will be under some pressure again. So in 2022, what have we seen? Well, freight rates have remained at or near all-time highs. Certainly fuel surcharges as a result of the war in Ukraine have increased in many cases up to 50%. So rates remain high. Congestion continues to be a struggle, primarily at the moment in China because of those lockdowns. You can see the graph on the right shows freight on stationary ships, so ships that aren't moving. Prior to COVID, certainly it remained fairly low at less than 8%, and since COVID has struck, it's hit as high as 14% of the global freight market that is sitting on ships that aren't moving. What congestion does is it causes vessel bunching, so where vessels would typically arrive in a really orderly fashion to be loaded or unloaded at our terminals and those globally. With congestion, vessels are being what's called bunched, so if one's delayed and another one, sometimes vessels choose to skip ports to make their scheduled arrival time at the next port, and quite often vessels are arriving 4 or 5 at a time, which causes congestion at the next port. And certainly that's having a significant impact on exporters. So they might be planning for a vessel to arrive in Melbourne on a Tuesday, but then it could arrive a week later. And certainly if you're dealing with temperature controlled freight, it's a real challenge to maintain the integrity of that freight when vessel arrivals are so unreliable. So I guess the question that everyone is asking is what will happen in the future, and I think it's dangerous to think about anything beyond 2022, but certainly most shipping lines are indicating that the demand remains strong. You can see the graph there, and certainly Virginia and Nick spoke about it. Container traffic at major ports has been significant through China and through California. That congestion has certainly dropped off in places like the west coast of the US and in Australia, but remains sky high in Asia as a result of the lockdowns. And I think Virginia, you touched on this as well, but departing container loads from China and Shanghai, you can see at the moment that the volumes out of Shanghai have certainly dropped off quite significantly over the last 2 to 3 months, whereas volumes out of China more broadly at other ports have increased as they've tried to meet that ongoing demand. So, you know, we think the headwinds remain for the rest of this calendar year. The global shipping reliability of schedules, so when vessels arrive on time, will remain a real challenge. We think as Chinese manufacturers lift production, there will be a wave of export containers head for Australia and other key markets. So that will result in rates remaining high, and congestion will likely remain a problem, which will continue to place pressure on exporters. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. That's a very comprehensive update. Much appreciated. Thank you again. Now it's time to move on to Darren Hu, who's the cargo manager for China Southern Airlines, and he will provide an air freight update. Over to you, Darren. Thank you. Do we have Darren zooming in? No, well, we then might, perhaps we'll jump then, if Darren's not online, to Zhao Wei to please do a presentation.
Okay, just 1 second while I get Joel to be connected.
Okay, thank you.
He's in the call. Just got to, I'll share my screen as well because I have the translation.左经理有可能要开那个麦克风。
Thanks, Chuan. So Chuan will be doing some the translation for Zhao Qi. Thank you.
Just 1 second. Just.
OK， 好，那我现在开始了。那各位大家好，我叫卓奇辉。那首先我先介绍一下今天的这个主题。那首先 我来自广东新粤恒道集团。新粤恒道创始于1995年，拥有20多年的进出口贸易经验，主要在跨境供应链领域里面提供相关的一个服务。
Okay. So we have Mr. Zhou here, who represents VIE China, who were incorporated over more than 20 years ago. Zhou himself is actually a senior customs consultant with over 10 years of experience in customs clearance, and their entity have been in the cross-border international trading and clearance for more than 20 years.
可能 PPT 要滑动一下。
您继续吧。
好，要介绍一下我们公司发展历程。我们新粤恒道1995年在广州成立，然后我们97年是获得一类货代的资质，然后2006年就广州海关授予我们的诚信报关企的一个称号，然后2016年我们引入了战略的投资，然后在2020年我们就是出口包机120多台，然后操作总价值的16亿的防疫物资。那么2021年是连续6年获得了一个全国优秀报关企业的称号。
So, as discussed before, VIE were established in Guangzhou more than 20 years ago. In 1997, they received the Class 1 Freight Forwarding qualification. A couple of accolades to mention would be they're considered, in 2012, they received a AA class customs decoration certification. I'll let Zhou continue. 您继续吧。
在资质荣誉方面，我们获得了海关预优的高级认证 ，ISO 9001这样认证。然后同时我们是中国报关协会、广州报关协会、黄埔报关协会的副会长单位。
A couple of accolades to mention. They've received ISO 9001 Quality Management System certification. They've also stand as the chair and also vice chair entity for the China Customs Decoration Association, also the Guangzhou Branch Customs Decoration.
我们旗下的有3个品牌加2个物流的服务品牌。那3个跨境物流品牌包括伟世博专注于空运，海易通专注于全程海运，通省专注于陆运。
So if you're under the group, they provide various solutions under different brands. So you have air freight and also inland transportation and also sea freight as well.
我们有9大的专精的产业的一个产品，包括食品、机电、胶密、航材、活体、医药、化矿等等汽配这些产品，为我们客户提供相关的服务。
So main industries that they cover: food, machine parts, aircraft parts, pharma, chemicals, minerals, cosmetics, and auto parts.
为大家简述的讲解一下我们海运的一个进口的流程。那一般情况下，海运一般来讲，收到到货通知，我们准备相关的一些资料，就包括我们补料也就是补提单所需的一个资料。补完资料之后，我们换提单，然后就根据合同发票装箱单，就做相应的报关报检。那如果海关有放行跟查验，如果有查验就查验，没有放行最后就提柜，然后就送货，就一个简单海运的流程。
Just for a general recap for those that don't do the importation yourselves in China. So the importation process is where you first receive arrival notice, and then you prepare the necessary materials for customs clearance. If the customs require you to provide extra supplementary materials, they'll do so. Once you have you're satisfied that, they'll ask you to switch the bill, they'll then undertake the customs clearance and inspection. If there's no problem, they'll release the goods, and then you can pick up the goods from the port.
接下来给大家介绍一下，就是疫情影响下的中国的华南地区的一些口岸的情况。那首先就是上海解封了，那当然上海解封给我们提供了一个华南地区的，还是因为华南地区就是由于我们整一个国际航期以及船期是不稳的，导致这个运力是不足。那运力供给紧张，导致这个运价是在持续的一个高位状态，但是应该除着在未来的一段区间内还是在这高位状态。当然，就是由于上海这边已经好转了，目前的塞港就有所缓解，整一个趋势是向好的。那对于另外一个原因，就由于南沙、深圳这边目前集装箱产业的增多，可能对于如果各位来讲，在进口的可能交付的时间会有拉长的。当然，所有的港口码头对外的都是一样，进入码头前都是必须要做有72小时的核酸检测报告。
So in terms of COVID and how it's affected South China ports and its congestions, in terms of shipping wise, we'll still see a relatively high sea freight levels. Space being an issue as well. Obviously, with the Shanghai COVID lockdown, it has resulted in quite a heavy congestion in South China, but at the same time, more orders going through there. We do see the congestion in Nansha, like Guangzhou and also Shenzhen, still continue for a period of time. And there are some implications in which drivers that do enter the ports of Guangzhou and Shenzhen having the extra requirement of a 72-hour COVID test in order to be able to enter the port premise. So that causes a implication from a logistics perspective as well.
接下来给大家介绍一下，就关于食品的一些最新的政策。海关总署公布了248号令，也就是中华人民共和国进口食品的境外生产企业的注册管理规定。然后进口食品境外生产企业就分2种注册的一个方式，一个是官方推荐，第二个是企业的申请注册，就列入到了下面的第7条项的，就是属于官方推荐的。那其他类别的就是境外企业自行委托代理人向海关总署提出申请。
我这里我想问一下，就是这个的话，就是目前这段时间有没有影响到，就是这个政策有没有影响到是澳大利亚食品在就是华人这边的一些清关呢？你可以补充一下这个信息吗
？OK， 待会下一页讲到。
Okay, so another consideration to consider would be, I'm sure a lot of exporters in Australia would know that this is the Customs Decree 248, in which overseas production enterprises of imported food needs to receive registration. There's 2 types. One type in which you are recommended and referred by the home country government authorities, covering 18 kinds of foods, and also where the other type is where you register it on your own, and also, or you authorize an agent to take this registration.
那其中第15条有讲到，已获得注册的企业向中国境内出口食品的，应当在食品的内外包装标注的在华的注册编号，或者所在国或地区的一个主管当局批准的注册编号。那大家也可以看一下，就是我们右下角的这一个，就是来自我们澳大利亚的一个牛奶，它必须要标注的我们的在华注册编号，或者一个所在国地区主管当局批准的注册编号，不然如果没有标注这个就做的不合规，后续可能海关会要求做整改。另外就是对于我们的进口食品的境外生产企業注册有效期是5年的，然后所以大家要值得关注的这个问题。
In terms of smooth importation and clearance of Australian food products. There's also the Customs Decree number 248, in which overseas production enterprises must comply with in terms of packaging. You must have the registration number clearly marked on the packaging. The validity of these registrations are for 5 years, and this has come into place from January 2022.
最后再给大家简单介绍一下关于冷冻食品的进口状况。那广州市在6月4号颁布了最新的一个政策，就关于调整进口冷冻食品集中监管措施的一个通告。那总结而言，就是说进入我们中国境内的一个冷冻食品，必须先进入集中的监管仓进行相应的一个消杀以及做核酸。 就是保证我们的整一个冷冻的食品一个安全的一个追溯的一个问题。
So this was obviously Nick earlier talked about centrally supervised warehouses in China for frozen goods. So similarly in Guangzhou, there was a new policy that was released just a couple of days ago on June 4th, in which the Guangzhou government had stipulated that any frozen goods need to be handled in a centrally supervised warehouse. It needs to undergo the disinfectant process and also tested for COVID to ensure that it's safe for being transported out of the warehouse.
以上就是我今天所有的介绍，感谢大家。
总之，您可以补充一下，就是这段时间的话，就是在这个集中监管上的话，就是这个进口商这边他通过这个过程会会花大概多长时间去把这个货取出来？
首先你要进入监管仓，第一个就是成本可能有所提供，但是因为你先要做核酸检测，那所有冷冻食品都会要先做核酸检测，出了结果你才能提。一般情况下都要1个星期左右才能就如果提出来。
So typically, in terms of these centrally supervised warehouses in which you need to undertake disinfection and also COVID testing procedure, there is an additional cost involved for whether you're exporter or importer looking to sell frozen goods in China. Typically, it does mean that it will add an extra week or so in order for this process to be undertaken in Guangzhou. Within the top row. Okay, so that's pretty much the conversation. This is pretty much our presentation from VIA China. We'll move on to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tiger. Really appreciate that, and also Chuan, thank you for doing the translation. It's great to get those insights from on the ground in Guangzhou. Now I think if we might move to Alex Wong and Andrew Sutherland from Polaris Global Sourcing, specialists in cold chain and perishable supply chain. Very much looking forward to hearing from you both. So I will welcome you to the screen now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great to be here. Thank you for asking us along. I'll just share a couple of slides and we can start from there. Just give me a minute here. Sorry. There we go. That's got it. Excellent. All right. Can everyone see that okay? Good. Okay. So just a quick one about who we are and what we do. Alex is one of the executive directors of Plurus. I'm the commercial director. We have another director called Peter Birrell, who is our Australian executive director. We work primarily across Australia and China. We've been around since 2011. We specialise in market access and delivery solutions for Australian premium food brands. Essentially, fresh food brands is where we sit. So far to date, we've done over 300 plus shipments over 6 years with 100% compliance and quality record. We haven't dropped one yet, even in the last 2 years, which has been interesting. So we're doing okay. We're one of only 3 companies globally approved for the GACC fresh milk import fast lane, which essentially means that as our shipments come in, they're tested, but they're not held. They just go straight through. And the reason we're able to do that is because we've got an absolutely rock solid track and trace platform, which means we can track exactly where everything goes. We sit on the CFNA, and we've authored a couple of DAWE commissioned papers, and that's pretty much what we do. We're fresh food specialists. In terms of next page, oh, here we go. Just a quick plug on us. We're different because we're one company that spans both countries. Normally with an export relationship, you end up having a sort of bouncing your product between 5 or 6 different people as you go. We're different. We wrap our arms around everything from literally working with our clients to develop products which meet all regulation and labeling requirements for China, right through to the full logistics chain, and then helping our clients deal directly with retailers, cutting out that sort of distributor relationship and giving you the ability to take your fate in your own hands. We've got a variety of different products we use to do that, but essentially what we really are passionate about is making sure that your brand has the best care possible at every stage along its journey from Australia to China. Look, a lot of people have spoken about freight, and I know Darren from China Southern is going to share some more, so we won't talk too much about that. What we will do is just share our thoughts on what's happening in the local environment. The last speaker talked about increased testing, and I think what's interesting is that we've seen a huge increase in testing over the last 2 years. And there's just a couple of stats there in terms of the amount of samples testing that GACC's done. Huge amounts of import qualifications suspended, spot checks on facilities, and really there's all that work has been to detect 550 positive COVID samples. But I think what's interesting is that there has been absolutely no let up in the testing regime, and that it's fair to assume that that's going to continue coming. The previous speaker spoke a little bit about 248, 249. There is a broader scope of products. There is the requirement is on the manufacturer to make sure you are compliant. There's a greater level of compliance required now, not from just the manufacturer, but also any other partners which are involved in the manufacture and shipping. And there's very much stronger penalties for non-compliance. So there's a fair bit of risk there if you get that wrong. And we've been helping a number of agencies navigate what has been a somewhat confusing pathway for a lot of different companies to make sure you get that registration right. We talked a little bit about what's happening in the domestic market. Look, there's been a couple of major regulatory notices which have gone out, and look, generally the effect has been about strengthening the health protection of cold chain logistics practitioners. COVID is essentially a food issue, and therefore the focus has very much been on food safety. We're seeing disinfections of increased disinfectant of transport systems, increased inspections of customs documents. Huge amount of increased registration, and that's really to facilitate a much stronger track and trace supply chain, and also built-in enhanced emergency planning and response capability. As the last speaker mentioned, we're seeing centralized testing and disinfection of the food chain in each city. And this is changing on a regular basis. These regulations shift from city to city. There's no one mandate that covers the entire country. And keeping track of what's happening in your particular area is really, really difficult. And it's really important to have people on the ground who are close to it and understand it. We talk a little bit about the 3 specials: special storage rooms, special retail counters, special salespeople. this is part of the need to have continued registration and inspection of everyone involved touching the food, literally from the time that it lands on the ground to the time it gets delivered to someone's front door. And wrapping up with all this is more of a track and trace QR code system, especially through retail, with a mandate to display these traceabilities through the supply chain system using QR codes. What that means for the retail model is that we're seeing it moving to what we're calling cloud consumption. And there's a couple of critical points here. I won't dwell on it too much because we've got a summary at the end that sort of sums it up. But essentially, fresh food used to be in store. It's now moving online, which is a major change. There's collect from store and home delivery has become the standard service. We're seeing rapid growth in cold chain logistics to support the centralized management and tracking of fresh food, but also the need to get fresh food through 2 or 3 more steps of the supply chain and literally get it to someone's front door with full track and trace in great quality. And what we're seeing is the number of sort of virtual storefronts is accelerating really, really quickly. Lots of new drop-off and pickup points, a smaller range, limited space. The retailers are getting a lot more involved in supplier orders, and they're getting a much closer vision as to what households are actually buying. And all that shopper data is being sucked up and analysed. And there's huge investments going into back-end supply tech from a retailer perspective. What we're also seeing is that this sort of traditional warehouse and RDC model and e-commerce fresh model, they're shifting a little bit. We're asking, our retailer partners are asking us how they can cut distribution partners out, but still retain track and trace supply chain. They're looking to take steps out of the model and looking to reduce cost and in many instances take distribution cost out, put that back into retailer margins, which now have to support increased track and trace and increased support around direct to source supply. And that's being supported by increased digitization of the consumer model, where they're getting more and more used to buying online, having stuff directly delivered and doing that on a daily basis. We talk a little bit about community group purchasing model, and that refers to the fact that there's the increased registration, the increased tracking, the fact that communities have been locked down actually forces retailers to think about how they service shoppers from a community perspective as opposed to an individual perspective, and how that supply chain then works through individual communities and how it meets government requirements to get there. So there's a significant shift in the way people are thinking about how they buy food, how they're actually buying food, and how food's being delivered at a micro level within the communities. And that's getting really interesting. The shopper data that's coming back will be further analysed, and I think what we'll see is start to see some hyper segmentation within tier 1 cities of different consumer groups that live within different communities, and how retailers can actually service those consumer groups a lot better. So we're seeing we've sort of put our heads together and said, well, this is what we think is going to happen in the future. We can see that there's going to be a drive towards more contactless handover of orders using unmanned delivery vehicles and ways to get a technology introduced that doesn't mean you've got people. Huge investments in data accuracy to not only establish improvements across the traceability platform, but also to really understand all of this basket data that shoppers are picking up, and retailers are going to start to use that to actively build category strategy, which will be based on micro ranging of different stores across tier 1 and tier 2 cities. So expect a much stronger conversation from retail partners about where the brand sits, what role it plays, and how best to take it to market. The improved digital cold chain equipment is rapidly improving traceability data and acquisition and documentation. And I think it's fair to also expect that there's going to be an expectation for a fresh food brand that all that is in place when you turn up to talk to a retailer or a distributor, and that you have that capability ready. And there's going to be more improvement on this. This level of retailer sophistication only goes one way. Once retailers become sophisticated in this way, they generally don't become less sophisticated afterwards. So expect to see this data driving huge improvements in how retailers go to market, and again, increased requirements for people who are operating in a cold chain environment. So what does all that mean? And if we summarize that up, and this is particularly for Australian FMCG brands who focus on cold and fresh food. Look, the ability to supply at the moment has become a critical advantage. Lots of supply chains, global supply chains have failed, and there's probably at least 50% less imported brands on the shelf now than there was 2 years ago. So if you can actually get stuff on a shelf, you are winning. You are absolutely winning, and that's a great opportunity to pick up new shoppers and new consumers. If you've got a premium price positioning, that allows you to buffer cost increases and creates relative value. And we're seeing retailers actively pulling away from promotional investment because they understand that there's higher cost of supply. So they are looking to work with suppliers who can get product to shelf and manage that accordingly. The increased testing, compliance checks, regulation controls means that knowledge becomes a competitive advantage. If you know what's going on, you can respond to it. You can communicate with your retail and distribution partners and manage expectations. But also supply chain tech capacity becomes a competitive advantage from a retailer perspective. Brands who have the ability to offer full track and trace will get the foot in the door and get the product on the shelf ahead of brands who can't. We're seeing significant increases in retailer sophistication. We're also seeing freight companies now touching a significant proportion of everyday shopping missions, and understanding the change in retailer need and the options that are available to you via different freight companies to drive that track and trace model right through to the point of shopper is going to be critical. And as a result, there's going to be higher supply chain benchmarks, both domestically within Australia, but also internationally within China. And that then means there's an increase in capability required for brands who seek to partner and grow with premium retailers in China in the FMCG space. That's it. I'm going to stop talking.
That's terrific. Thank you. Thanks for that presentation. I think it's nice. Sorry, phone calls. It's just nice, very nice that there are the opportunities out there. So I think it's really interesting, all of that data and the track and trace and possibility for investment. I guess COVID here has made a lot of differences to those sorts of online shopping as well. So it's an interesting thought. So thank you for that one. Now we might move to Darren from China Southern. Thank you very much for jumping online, Darren. I'm very interested to hear your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is everything goes well now? Yeah, okay,
All
thanks.
Good. Thanks, Darren. Good.
Yeah, thanks, Virginia, and thanks, Caroline. Sorry for the connection error. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Darren Ho, Cargo Manager of China Southern Airlines in Australia and in New Zealand. And it's an honorable opportunity to be invited as a speaker to attend the meeting and make a presentation today. And given the situation, I just took my office 2 months ago. I think it's a best chance to make me assimilating to the local logistics industry, and thanks ACBC and the GVTA to make me have access to communicate with our counterparts and partners in Australia. Let's get started. The subject of my presentation is maintaining confidence in the adversity, and it will be divided into 3 parts. So first off, let me tell you something about the figures of export to China from Australia in 2021. China is the largest trading nation of Australia, with export commodities valued about 116 billion.
Right, now Darren's connections just dropped off. I think also, right, what we might do is move then perhaps to the next speaker, just to keep things moving along. And I'll see. Oh no, he's back online. Okay, thanks, Darren. You just dropped off for a minute. We'll continue with your presentation. Thank you. You're back online now, Darren. So if you'd like to continue, thank you.
Okay, sorry. We have about 9,100 tons of cargo uplifted to China in 2021, and it is decreased by approximately 15% compared to 2020. While the flights volume was decreased by 33%. So from the start of this year till now, CZ has doubled the number of flights between Australia and China, respectively, in Sydney and Melbourne. The figures, as I mentioned, indicate clearly that during the COVID-19 pandemics, we both had tough issues. But the Chinese market, I think, it still preserves its resilience, and it still has a giant demand in the commodities of Australian products, including milk products, seafood, fruits, and some e-commerce related products. In my personal opinion, I think the trade volume for our export to China will continue to grow up once the trading relations between Australia and China move to a further step, and global economic environment gets revived as well. So I would like to move on to the second part, current background and the resources of China Southern Alliance. Definitely, we both confront various issues brought by the COVID-19 pandemics, no matter in Australia or in China and the rest of the world, such as staff and devices shortage on ground services for passenger flights and freighters. This year's China South, at this stage, China Southern Airlines has about 15 passenger flights per week in Sydney and one daily flight in Melbourne, flying to southern China, specifically in Guangzhou and Shenzhen. So one just arrived in Sydney at the end of March. Sometimes we had to cancel or adjust the time slot of the flights, subject to the manpower or devices shortage. There are all kinds of issues at that time. But now this condition seems to be restrained, probably. As you all know, CZ has established a regional center in Australia over about 10 years ago. Yeah, we have operated a couple of air routes and flights between Australia and China. At this stage, the flights of CZ maybe account for the largest proportion of this Australia to China market. So the aviation authority, the airport, and the ground service handler, they all provide substantial support to us, including the flights application approval more swiftly, and the parking bay arrangements, and the sufficient manpower and devices supplies. So in Guangzhou and Shenzhen of southern China, we have taken a specific set of measures as well to align with what a region station has done to smoothly operate the inbound cargo from Australia. We have an independent cargo terminal in Guangzhou and relatively strong foundation in Shenzhen, and we will give a priority. Typically, we will give a priority to inbound cargo from Australia, from Europe, and North America. So we will make every effort to deliver it to consignees as soon as possible, even if abrupt pandemic, local pandemic occurs. So after the pandemic outbroken in Guangzhou in April, we have summarized the experiences and improved our internal procedures to better handle inbound cargo. In case of badly backlog happening again, so we have expanded warehouse, increased our cooling room storage capacity, and we vacated a special venue just close to the apron in Guangzhou. The special venue was is acted as contingency to expand our storage capacity. So we will keep our ground, and furthermore, we will keep our ground handling service team available at all times by optimizing our human resources. In addition, for one thing to put forward at the webinar, in order to revitalize the domestic civil aviation industry during the hard time in China. The Civil Aviation Authority has released exclusive subsidy policy to domestic airlines company in China. It will be conducted within a certain time period, maybe 2 months. It is commenced from May 21st. Yeah, specifically, the authority will provide subsidies to 4,500 domestic flights every day. Yeah, but it is based on the gap of the revenue and the variable cost for every flight. It is implemented as a backup scheme for domestic aviation industry. Furthermore, based on the philosophy of customer orientation, China Southern Airlines has made a supplementary plan for the domestic flights. We will made a supplementary schedule operated by wide bodies flight, which includes about 10 provincial capitals departed from Guangzhou or Shenzhen. That is to say, in terms of the domestic flights networks, the domestic logistics in China will have a relatively stable networks to maintain the integrity of the supply chain and promote the transit shipment irrespective of the pandemics. It is very important, I think, for Australian export to China as a considerable part of cargo from Australia to China were uplifted eventually to inland cities by domestic flights. I believe this policy will absolutely convince the clients in Australia to ramp up the production orders to China. Nowadays, China is committing to implementing extensive measures on every aspect related to economy revitalization, like what I said above. Most of them are macro policy. With these steps going forward, the emerging market demand with giant population of China, I think it will naturally improve the accessibility and provoke the capacity of our logistics industry. This leads me to my last point. Average price. At this stage, a couple of elements caused a dramatic increase in operation costs, for carriers in China, including the high price of fuel, restricted aircrafts and ground service resources, and mainly it is the virus tests and the sterilization for cargo, which are put together to bring a high rate of export and import cargo. To some extent, I think the import cargo, the high rate of the import cargo guaranteed the regular operation of our flights to Australia. So in the second quarter, as I said, due to a series of elements, especially the pandemic outbreaks successively in several metropolises in China, like Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, and we confronted some unexpected situations to compel us to conduct special sales policy, which is higher than before, so as to control the severe backlog in destination terminals. But that situation will no longer happen again. We have made some steps to improve our capacity and improve our capability. CZ, and on the other hand, according to the up-to-date flight schedule on my hand, China Southern Alliance will continue to maintain stable flight resources in Australia, in Melbourne and Sydney, in the third quarter. And we will conduct original rate, but it will have a slight fluctuations to stabilize export business as much as we can. To summarize, China Southern Alliance will continue to strive for cost efficiency, enhancement and improvement, and we will keep upgrading our services in Australia and remain reliable for our valued customers. And I want to appreciate the ongoing support from ACBC and GVTA, and most important, our clients who are listening at this stage. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for choosing China Southern Alliance as a partner, and hopefully we can strengthen our cooperation. Thanks for listening. Thanks, Virginia.
Thanks so much, Darren. Yes, we work closely with China Southern and Victoria, and I know other branches as well. So thank you so much for that presentation. If I could now ask Huang Reisong, Senior Commodity Inspector Consultant with New Ever Investment, to give us a presentation. Huang Reisong works as it's 23 years of experience in customs clearance inspection, and will be providing a China shipping update. So over to you. Thank you.
So Virginia, this would have been an issue on my part. We've already had the presentation from VIE China. I believe the next speaker would be Jenny Lin from Shuhang Group.
Okay.
But apologies. I should have clarified with that.
That's okay. So we have background.
Okay, I'm ready.
Jenny, background noise. Jenny, I'm starting to have background noise.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Let me share the screen.
Jenny, you've got very bad background noise there.
Yeah, thank you. Also, can you hear the?
No, Jenny,
Can
you've got very bad background noise. You stop that noise in the background, or is it Darren?
Okay, now it's okay. Can you hear me?
No, there's terrible background noise. Really bad noise. There's machinery noise. Background. That's better. Okay, now that's your noise. I'm not sure.
It is from your computer there.
On your computer?
It seems to have a slight buzzing to it. Is there any way that there would be something like that in the background or on your computer?
I can't hear you. You've got like a fan noise or computer noise. Just while Jenny gets sorted with that, I'll let you know she's the Vice General Manager.
So now it's okay.
No.
Now it's okay. Can you hear me?
No,
It's still quite. It's got a large background noise. There's some website open or something that could be causing that noise.
But a fan or air.
But I can hear. But I can hear you clearly.
Your
so
headphones are your headphones plugged in properly? You can just hear a buzzing from your side there.
Okay, just a moment. So now it's okay. Now it's okay. Can you hear me?
It's still buzzing. Would it be your headphones maybe?
So let me share the screen again. Just a moment.
No, it's not. It doesn't have to do with the screen. It's the sound.
Your background. Could you take off your headphones? Unplug your headphones.
Or like plug them in again. See if it's something like. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Now it's okay.
No. Come back again.
Is your computer above a fan or something causing that noise?
But I can hear you clearly, but I don't know why you don't hear me. This I don't know why.
You have a noise in your room. So
It stopped for a second when you touched your headphones. Would that be something that you?
Hello, Chan, can you hear me for what's the problem? Chan.
我可以听得到，只不过是有一个背景有一个隔
everyone
音
we've。had some technical issues.
Oh, okay.
不知道是什么导致那个声音。
这声音会有问题吗？现在？
是的，对。
声音会有什么问题啊？
就有一个背景有一个傻的一个声音。
太奇怪。但是我这边是没有任何问题的，我不知道要怎么处理。
What we might do while Jenny's sorting that, could we perhaps start on a couple of questions?
Yes, I might just mute you now.
Jenny until she gets it sorted. And
Yes.
If you could start on a few questions, that'd be terrific. So we can sort that out. Thank you.
Apologies for technical difficulties, everybody. Again, thank you very much, ACBC and also Victorian government for this opportunity to, also speak and also moderate this question and answers forum. I guess we've seen quite a lot of interesting presentations from everybody here today. Plenty of stats and knowledge about the current congestions in across sea freight and also air freight to China. Given the fact that we do have exporters here as part of the audience today, one thing that I think would be interesting to share to exporters would be firm practical advice as to ensure you can export your goods effectively and safely to China. So I guess one question I'd like to ask towards to Darren from China Southern is, given that space is restricted and the number of flights are limited, do you have any advice for Australian exporters or Victorian exporters in terms of booking space? Is there a preference for China Southern in terms of the product commodity? Yes, some advice for Australian exporters, that would be really appreciated. Sorry, Darren, can you hear me?
Sorry. Can you just repeat it again?
Okay.
Sorry
So
for-
Darren, do
Yeah.
you have any advice for Australian or Victorian exporters on getting their goods safely exported to China? So how long in advance should Australian exporters book with China Southern to, whether it's fruits, it could be, cherries, it could be supplements from Australia to China? Is there how far in advance should they talk to you about exporting their goods to China?
Yeah, thank you. Now in Melbourne we have a Delifly CZ8012. The aircraft type is the Airbus 350, and normally we have the space of 12 PMCs. So normally we have no problem in the origination station. We have sufficient space for customers in Australia, and we can typically we will accept the booking requests from our main customers, and for the perishable cargoes, they are usually our priority to approve the space and arrange the lodgement. It will be processed the first time when it arrives at the destination terminal. So except for the backlog happening in the destination, and is the customers clearance issues for the allotment. Normally we need about when the shipment arrived at the destination airport, and we will keep it in our cooling storeroom, and for careful treatment. So if it is okay with the customs clearance, you can pick up the shipments the next day. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Darren.
We
Thank you for.
might just have another go and see if Jenny has sorted out the audio problem. Jenny, if it's still loud, that sounds all right. Are you?
Yes, here.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, all good. Thank you.
Oh, wait. I'm waiting for the time, all the time. Okay, let me share the computer screen. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, that's fine, Jenny. Yes, all good. Thank you.
Okay, let me go. This is Jenny. I'm from the Xuehang Group, and I joined Xuehang in 2017, and this time is very honored to take up this time here and responsible for introduce our company. We can see here the types of imported products via Guangzhou from Australia to Guangzhou. Most of the products are the dairy products, fresh seafood, and fresh fruit foods, and baby products, skincare products, healthy springs, and chemical products. That is the more computer in China for this product from Australia to China. Maybe most people will think how to do the clearance without any problem. So let's see what the process we need to do it. Here you can see when the cargo arrive at the airport or Shenzhen airport, we need to wait for the station to sort out the cargo, and then they have the data into the customer system. We can first step, we can exchange the documents. Second, inspection declaration. We need to put the EDI into the customer clearance systems. Third, for the clearance customer, we need to provide the document. Just a moment, we will advise you what document you need to hand off. The first, customer goods inspection, it maybe happen because some of the goods will be handled by the customers, maybe will be inspection, but not is the normal. Sometimes it will happen. 5, if it's okay, then customer clearance system will show release the goods, then you can pick up the goods. But to pick up the goods, you need to solve all the charges with the stations. 7, take samples for the currency. For this one, if for the seafood and for the free food, for the special food, if for general cargo, not need this step. 8, we can pick up the goods. And what document we need to provide? Drafts of the document, customers clearance form, invoice, packing list, and the contract. If you don't know which the document you need and what the sample, you can contact us. We will send the sample to you for take a look. And another issue, the status of the importation and customer clearance in Guangzhou airport during COVID Shanghai lockdown, affected by the outbreak of the epidemic in Shanghai. The import of goods in Guangzhou airport increased so much. So we will see sometimes the goods from maybe last 2 months ago. Most of the cargo from Australia to Guangzhou, the airport, then the sorting cargo is very slow. We need to at least 2 or 3 times. Then the station can finish the sortation, and then we can hand over the document to them for the clearance. So you will see after this Shanghai airport is open, then the most of cargo you will get more smooth from the airport station. Shanghai is no longer under lockdown, which we are automated reduce the factor in Guangzhou airport and importation service levels gradually return to normal. So if for most of the people maybe most concerned, now you can send most of the cargo from the Australia, Sydney or Melbourne to Guangzhou or Shenzhen, then you will be sorting out more quickly. Normally it needs 1 or 2 days is okay. If the data sent is no problem, then you just need 2 days to finish all the clearance. Another issue, consideration suggestion on importation into Guangzhou Baiyun Airport for the Australia Victoria flow companies. Then the first, provided details cargo information to secure the space. That is the most important because each airline the space is depend on the current situation. The second, documents applied for customer clearance must be complete. So before you send the cargo out from the Australia to China, it's better for you to send all the documents for us to check in for you first. Then you can avoid most problem if have. You can see because the relationship between the Australia and China, then most of the cargo will be inspected in Guangzhou or in other airport in China. So we hope and avoid any problem in China's airport, then you need to send all the documents for us checking first, especially for the fruit and seafood like this special cargo. The third, the commodity code must be filled in currently. Maybe this step will be handled by us first, but need your provide document or some information must be correct. The first, the variety of the goods declaration must be complete. That is very important because we need to send all the correct document, correct information to the customer system. Then we can get the release. The last one, instructing the customer clearance arrangement in advantage. So when the cargo, before you sending this cargo, you need to send all the documents like just mentioned packing list, invoice, and the contract, and the airway, and all the consigned information. So we can check all the, before the cargo arrive, we can check all the documents for your sign. So this is the suggestion for you, especially from Australia to China, most of cargo seafood and fruits. Maybe most of the people concerned about the air freight, how the air freight will go on for the next 2-3 months or for the next half a year. So as our experience, the air freight cost stable about 1.5 to 2 AUD per kilo for the general cargo, but just keep mind in for the fresh and frozen cargo, maybe will be double over the next 2 or 3 months with the COVID-19 in China coming under control. So if you for the general cargo, it's okay to secure the space, but for the special fresh or the frozen cargo, we need to check the space first, and then you just whether you can prepare your cargo. So that's the space issue is more concerned. The second, with the control of the epidemic, the space should gradually recover. From now that you cannot care about the space will be higher or will be tight like this one, but from the time going, you will get the space will be more maybe difficult, because most of the cargo will be from Australia to China. So just need to check before you prepare the cargo. The third, for the time being, many airlines reform the line from Melbourne to Guangzhou or Shenzhen now. And there are small process with view to handle more imported shipment. From our experience and from we can see it, actually the most of the space is very tight from Melbourne to China, especially for Guangzhou, Shenzhen, because last 2 months ago, the Shanghai is locked down already, but now it is maybe we will release some space from the Australia to Shanghai, so you can see some the space will release now. And if you have any questions, you can see our contact and our WeChat, the code. You can join my WeChat code, and also you can send me the email to if you have any questions for your cargo from the Australia to China in Guangzhou or in Shenzhen or other airport. You have any questions, you just contact me. I will try our best to serve for your side. If we can do anything else for you. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Penny, thank you so much, and thank you for persevering with the sound issues. That was terrific. So we've actually come to the end of the session, and we're really running out of time for any further questions. Chuan, I'm sorry about that. We do have a question from Owen Zheng about state and federal government support. So Owen, if you could email us, I'll be very happy to send that up to Nick Henderson on your behalf. And there was also Jamie from Kay and Burton was asking for recommendations for relocation services. So I think if you'd like to email me on that, I can handle that for you as well. So I do apologise, we haven't got more time, but I think you'll all agree we've had terrific presentations, and hopefully they've answered most of your questions. So a big thank you really to Sean, Darren, Xiaoqi, Alex, Andrew, Jenny, and of course Nick in Chengdu. And he is a great supporter of this series, and we do appreciate all his efforts on our behalf. As mentioned, this freight session is part of a series under the Global Victoria Trade Alliance program, and there is one more to come in this series and a couple of strategic China briefings as well for this year. Our next and final session will be looking at incorporating blockchain and sustainability practices to build resilient supply chains and future-proof your business. So the bookings for that will be going out very shortly. If you'd like to get in touch with any of the speakers, please just respond to the follow-up email and we'll be happy to put you in touch. We're working with other sectors as well on some not-to-be-missed sessions, including a global economics session with ANU. So please keep an eye out for invitations to those. If you're not a member, please join ACBC. You support our work, but you also benefit enormously by the discounts, knowledge sharing and networking opportunities that we offer. So please do join us. We have a short survey. I understand, Katie, you can nod if that's popping up at the end. So please complete that so we can target our work towards your needs. And we also look forward to seeing you either in person or online very soon. And in the meantime, please stay safe and well and join me in thanking our speakers. So thank you all very much.